For billions of years, the universe whispered nothing. Its vastness was a theater of silence until one night, something spoke. Across observatories around the world, monitors flared with impossible readings. A pulse of radio energy, structured and deliberate, pierced through the static. It wasn't noise, it wasn't background radiation, it was a voice in the void. At NASA's Deep Space Network, alarms triggered automatically. Technicians froze, watching as their instruments translated frequencies that seemed organized. The data pulsed in intervals, 3131, repeating like a heartbeat from beyond the stars. Within minutes, cross-verification began. The same pattern appeared in Chile, Australia, and Japan. Whatever this was, it was everywhere. Veteran astrophysicists couldn't explain it. This was no solar flare, no pulsar signature, no artifact from human interference. The frequencies were too precise. They carried structure, modulation that hinted at intention. As the data streamed in, one conclusion began to chill every researcher involved. The universe might not be silent after all. The message lasted just 11 seconds before fading into absolute quiet. But those 11 seconds changed everything. The next day, agencies around the world entered silent coordination. Lines between nations blurred in the face of a mystery that transcended borders. A single phrase began circulating internally, or "The universe just replied." And at the heart of that reply lay a single object. The signal's point of origin was triangulated, not from deep space, but from within our own solar system. It wasn't coming from a known satellite or planet. It came from a small, fast-moving body just beyond Jupiter's orbit. Its official designation soon followed, 3I Atlas. Suddenly the cosmos wasn't quiet anymore, it was watching. The birth of 3I Atlas. The object was first spotted by the Atlas Survey Telescope in Hawaii. A faint glimmer drifting across a backdrop of endless stars. At first it looked like another harmless comet, the kind that comes and goes unnoticed. But something about its motion stood out. It wasn't following any predictable orbital path. As astronomers tracked its course, they realized it wasn't looping around the sun. It was cutting straight through the solar system on a one-way journey. Calculations revealed it would enter from interstellar space, pass the inner planets, and leave forever. That alone made it historic. It was only the third interstellar object ever detected, after Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. But 3I Atlas was different. Its trajectory wasn't just fast, it was impossibly precise. Each hour of observation revealed slight deviations as if it was making course corrections. Natural objects don't do that. Even gravity couldn't explain the fine-tuned adjustments scientists were seeing. It was behaving as if guided. Within weeks, the world's most powerful telescopes were aimed directly at it. NASA, ESA, and private observatories collaborated to analyze every photon bouncing off its surface. The data painted a picture no one was prepared for. 3I Atlas reflected light too perfectly. Not like ice, not like rock, more like polished metal. That's when the whispers began. "This isn't a comet," one researcher murmured in a leaked recording. "It's something pretending to be one." Soon, 3I Atlas became more than a scientific anomaly. It became a global obsession. Governments wanted answers, scientists wanted data. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, the signal came again. Only this time it was stronger. Impossible velocity, the traveler that defies physics speed. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. Objects moving through our solar system are bound by its gravitational rhythm. Asteroids drift at 20,000 miles per hour, comets at 30,000. But 3I Atlas was tearing through the void at 152,000 miles per hour. That's 5 times faster than any known celestial body of similar mass. It wasn't just fast, it was purposeful. Astrophysicists ran simulation after simulation trying to find a natural explanation. Maybe it had been ejected from a collapsing star system. Maybe it was accelerated by a supernova shockwave millions of years ago, but every model failed to explain one thing: its controlled precision. Natural debris doesn't fine-tune its path mid-flight, and yet Atlas did. Its velocity didn't fluctuate randomly like comets tumbling through solar winds. Instead, the object maintained a constant, stable trajectory, a perfect line through gravitational chaos. Even the sun's pull barely affected it. It was as if 3i Atlas ignored gravity altogether, coasting through space-time on its own terms. NASA scientists began whispering the unthinkable: propulsion. Could a comet generate thrust without jets of gas or visible energy emissions? Thermal readings said no. Optical data showed no outgassing, no tail, no debris cloud, nothing that could explain acceleration. So where was this power coming from? Somewhere, buried beneath its reflective surface, something was pushing it. Gently, deliberately. The discovery sparked a quiet panic within the scientific community. Private emails leaked from within the Jet Propulsion Laboratory hinted at internal debates. Some thought it was a magnetic anomaly. Others suspected an exotic propulsion system beyond human comprehension. But one phrase appeared again and again in the classified documents: non-gravitational acceleration, no natural explanation. For now, the public was told nothing. NASA referred to it as a data processing anomaly. But deep within the agency, scientists knew that what they were seeing was impossible. And when the speed calculations were back-checked by the European Space Agency, the verdict was identical. 3i Atlas wasn't just fast, it was intentionally fast. As it continued toward the inner solar system, its motion became even stranger. The object seemed to anticipate gravitational wells, adjusting just before passing near planets. Jupiter's immense pull should have bent its path by degrees. It didn't. Instead, Atlas glided effortlessly past, barely altering its heading. It was flying as if it knew exactly where it wanted to go, origin beyond the Oort cloud. If 3i Atlas didn't come from our solar system, then where did it come from? That question haunted astronomers. By rewinding its trajectory with high-precision models, researchers traced its path back through interstellar space. Not from the Oort cloud, not from the Kuiper belt, but from beyond the edge of the sun's influence. Its origin was the dark gulf between the stars. That region is a desert, a vacuum so empty that even dust struggles to exist. No light, no planets, no heat. Yet somehow this object had emerged from that void and entered our system with pinpoint accuracy. It hadn't drifted aimlessly, it had aimed. If it truly came from another star system, its journey could have taken tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, of years. And still its trajectory remained razor straight, unaffected by galactic tides or collisions. That's not luck, that's navigation. To survive that kind of cosmic voyage, an object would need structure, maybe even intelligence behind it. Something built, not born. Comparisons with Oumuamua were inevitable. That 2017 visitor also showed signs of unusual acceleration. But Atlas made Oumuamua look primitive. Its speed, precision and stability were magnitudes greater. It wasn't a rock, it was an event. Data from the James Webb Space Telescope deepened the mystery further. Spectral analysis revealed an absence of the usual icy compounds found in comets. No water vapor, no carbon monoxide tail, only a strange reflective alloy and faint traces of structured nickel molecules. This wasn't random chemistry, it was the fingerprint of design. The implications rippled through every major observatory. If this object wasn't natural, then someone, or something, had launched it, a civilization capable of engineering matter to endure millions of years of interstellar flight. Perhaps it wasn't coming to us, perhaps it was just passing by, taking a look. As Atlas approached Mars's orbit, the mystery deepened. New measurements suggested micro-adjustments to its path, timed perfectly with our observation windows. Each shift happened when telescopes had the clearest line of sight. It wasn't coincidence, it was choreography. Scientists began to whisper behind closed doors. What if it's been watching us this whole time? The surface that shines too bright. The closer Atlas came, the stranger it became. When sunlight struck its body, the reflected light was dazzling, far too intense for a natural object. Comets scatter light irregularly, their surfaces rugged and scarred by billions of years of impact. But 3i Atlas? It gleamed like polished metal. Every photon bounced back as if from a mirror crafted by deliberate hands. The James Webb telescope captured detailed spectrographic data, and what it revealed was nothing short of shocking. The light reflection was uniform across its surface, suggesting a level of smoothness never before observed in any natural celestial body. Even asteroids with the flattest terrains show chaotic reflectivity patterns. This one was nearly perfect, as if its skin had been engineered. "Nature doesn't polish," whispered one researcher. "People do." At first, skeptics argued it might just be a coating of frozen gases, perhaps carbon dioxide ice forming a glassy shell. But that theory evaporated quickly. The temperature readings didn't match. The surface was far too warm for that to exist. And more strangely, the reflectivity remained stable as it rotated. There were no fluctuations in brightness, no irregularities at all. It shimmered like a machine pretending to be a rock. The term specular reflection began appearing in scientific memos, the same phrase used for metallic alloys. If true, Atlas wasn't reflecting light like stone or ice. It was reflecting it like titanium, like steel. It was as if something out there had built this traveler to blend into cosmic background. Until now. When Webb focused on it again, the brightness varied in pulses. Rhythmic, measured, almost intentional. Light wasn't just reflecting, it was signaling. 3 flashes, then 1. The same 3131 pattern embedded in the first radio transmission. Whatever Atlas was, it wasn't just passing through, it was communicating. Scientists grew uneasy. Was this an artifact, a vessel, a probe? The question was no longer whether it was natural. But what kind of intelligence could create something so enduring, so precise, so quietly magnificent? One that had waited in silence for billions of years, until we finally learned how to see it. The perfect rotation and the broken law's rotation. The simplest way to tell a rock from a machine. Comets spin erratically, tumbling through the void like drunken dancers, their axes shifting unpredictably. But Atlas didn't tumble. It rotated with clockwork precision, maintaining orientation toward the sun and, most disturbingly, toward Earth. Its movement wasn't random, it was choreography. Each observation confirmed the same pattern. Every 8 hours it completed a perfect rotation. Not faster, not slower, not even by a fraction. Even when gravitational forces from nearby planets should have altered its spin, it remained unwavering. It moved like a stabilized spacecraft aboard a self-correcting mechanism designed for balance. The precision was unsettling. NASA scientists ran computer models simulating 1,000 natural trajectories, but none matched what they observed. It was as if something within the object was adjusting its spin in real time, small, imperceptible corrections, guiding it like a ship keeping its bow against the cosmic current. "Who's steering this thing?" one engineer muttered. As data accumulated, so did tension. The object's luminosity didn't fluctuate with rotation. It stayed constant, like an engineered light source. Instruments designed to detect heat differentials found none. Its thermal profile was unnaturally smooth, maintaining equilibrium even when half of it faced the sun. Natural objects heat unevenly. Atlas didn't. The only way to maintain such balance would be through active control, either via magnetic alignment or internal stabilization. But how could a lifeless comet possess that? Unless, of course, it wasn't lifeless. Unless it was operating as it was meant to, as something designed to observe, not decay. One night, a subtle anomaly appeared. When Earth's telescopes had their clearest view, the rotation subtly slowed, as if the object was aligning itself to face us directly. For 6 hours, its reflected light grew brighter, concentrated, unwavering. Then it resumed normal rotation, as though it had looked back. By this point, even the skeptics began to fall silent. This wasn't chaos, this was choreography. And somewhere out there, perhaps across the gulf between stars, whoever built Atlas had just made eye contact with humanity. The thermal anomaly, internal heat that shouldn't exist. When the James Webb Space Telescope locked its infrared sensors onto Atlas, the team expected to see alternating zones of warmth and cold. After all, comets spin through sunlight and shadow. Their temperatures fluctuate wildly. But Atlas didn't. One side remained consistently hot, even as it rotated out of direct sunlight. It radiated warmth, steady, measured, and entirely unnatural. This wasn't residual heat from solar exposure. It was a persistent energy source coming from within. There were no visible jets, no sublimating gases, no vents. Nothing to suggest that heat was escaping naturally. It was as though something beneath its surface was generating power, something controlled. At first, scientists theorized radioactive decay. Perhaps isotopes within the object were releasing energy. But that hypothesis fell apart fast. The pattern was too stable, the heat too uniform. Decay is chaotic. This was organized. It resembled thermal regulation, not radiation. One analysis compared the readings to how spacecraft radiators function. Systems designed to disperse excess heat evenly. That's when people started whispering, "Is it mechanical?" The distribution pattern wasn't random. The same surface areas maintained identical temperatures hour after hour, rotation after rotation. No known natural body behaves that way. The deeper Webb probed, the more unsettling the data became. Infrared spectrographs showed faint pulses, thermal surges at regular intervals, as if some internal mechanism was switching on and off. Each pulse coincided with the object's alignment toward Earth. It wasn't just regulating heat, it was responding. If true, that would mean Atlas wasn't just reflecting light or drifting through gravity's grasp. It was alive with energy, controlled from within. A heat signature that echoed the complexity of technology. And for the first time, whispers inside NASA began using a phrase that hadn't been spoken aloud since the era of SETI's earliest dreams: active system. That single phrase changed everything, because if Atlas could regulate heat, it could store energy. And if it could store energy, it could transmit. Chemical composition, beyond nature. When light from Atlas passed through Webb's spectrometers, the resulting graph made no sense. Its chemical composition didn't resemble any known comet, asteroid, or planetary fragment. Instead of the expected water vapor and dust, Webb detected massive amounts of carbon dioxide, 10 times higher than typical levels. And stranger still, nickel, pure, reflective, and abundant, streamed from the surface. Where was the iron? Normally, iron dominates metallic bodies in the cosmos. It's abundant, stable, and forged in the hearts of dying stars. Yet Atlas contained almost none. This inversion of natural ratios, a nickel over iron, was unprecedented. And on Earth, that ratio is seen only in refined alloys, manufactured materials. Even more shocking were the organic molecules. Webb detected carbon chains, but not the random primitive ones typical of cosmic dust. These were structured, organized, long, repeating sequences that resembled polymeric forms. They weren't biological in the living sense, but they were engineered. It was chemistry that whispered intention. Some scientists suggested contamination, maybe interference from terrestrial sources. But cross-analysis with the European Southern Observatory confirmed the same readings. No instrument error, no glitch. The data was pure, and it defied everything we thought we knew about how matter forms naturally. In the lab, one chemist made an observation that froze the room. "These patterns," she said, "aren't random, they're symmetrical. Symmetry in molecular structure doesn't occur naturally on that scale. It's the hallmark of design, the fingerprint of intelligence trying to leave its mark in matter itself." The room fell silent. The longer scientists stared at the data, the more they realized it looked less like geology and more like architecture. Layered compositions, structured alloys, repeating chemical geometries. It was as though the object had been built molecule by molecule, each part intentional, each layer deliberate. If nature didn't make it, something else did. And that something was ancient enough and advanced enough to send a vessel across the stars, carrying secrets our chemistry couldn't even name. 3i Atlas wasn't a rock. It was a message in material form. Hollow structure and incompatible density. When scientists tried to estimate Atlas's mass, the numbers didn't add up. Its gravitational influence, measured by how it bent nearby trajectories, was far too weak for its size. If its dimensions were correct, it should have been hundreds of millions of tons heavier. Yet it behaved like a shell, hollow, light, and eerily precise. The data defied every known natural formation model. Natural bodies form through accretion. Dust, pebbles, rock, gravity compressing everything into a dense mass. But a hollow object can't survive that process. It would collapse long before becoming stable. And yet, 3i Atlas wasn't collapsing. It was perfectly intact, resonating with frequencies that hinted at internal structure. Not cracks, not fractures, framework. Seismic analog readings from reflected radar waves revealed layered density. Not uniform, but segmented. Like compartments. Some zones absorbed radio energy completely, while others bounced it back sharply. That's not random composition. That's design. The implication was staggering. It meant that Atlas wasn't a fragment of something. It was something assembled, a vessel perhaps, a relic of a civilization capable of crafting objects that could survive interstellar flight for millennia. Something built to travel or to wait. Engineers studying the resonance frequencies noticed harmonic patterns, vibrations that repeated at exact intervals. When energy hit certain parts of its surface, it produced low-frequency echoes like tuning forks buried in metal. Natural rocks don't hum with precision, machines do. Even stranger, the harmonics shifted slightly depending on where the readings came from. It was as though the interior was adjusting, redistributing resonance, a structural response, alive, in a mechanical sense, adaptive. When the internal density model was rendered digitally, the entire object looked wrong. Not spherical, not random, but geometrically layered, like nested shells within shells. One engineer muttered what everyone else was thinking. "It looks like a spacecraft pretending to be a comet." The question now wasn't what Atlas was, but why it had come. And before anyone could find an answer, it began to move again. Micro-trajectory adjustments. The object that knows. It's being watched. Every movement of Atlas was logged to the microsecond. Dozens of observatories tracked it, expecting a steady path toward the inner system. But something strange began to happen. Tiny deviations, so small they were almost undetectable, appeared in the data. It wasn't drifting, it was steering. These micro-adjustments weren't random, they coincided with observation windows, moments when telescopes on Earth had the clearest line of sight. Each time our planet turned toward it, Atlas made a subtle shift in its trajectory, just enough to realign its reflective surface toward us, as if it wanted to be seen. NASA called it coincidence. But coincidences don't repeat with mathematical precision. Even minor radiation pressure couldn't account for such consistent timing. No natural force acts according to human visibility schedules. This was deliberate, intelligent motion. The world's most sensitive instruments, including the Deep Space Network, confirmed the adjustments. There were no visible gas jets, no energy plumes, nothing ejecting material. Yet the object's velocity changed by a measurable degree, over and over again. A force was at work, invisible, controlled, and responsive. As its path shifted, one eerie pattern emerged. Every course correction occurred when Earth's observational angle reached peak clarity. Never before, never after. It was synchronizing with our eyes, almost as if the object was aware of the moment it was being observed. It wasn't just moving through the system, it was performing. That's when the tone at NASA changed. The data scientists stopped sending open reports. Access to telemetry became restricted, and researchers who had been posting public updates were suddenly reassigned, their communications silenced. Whatever was happening, it was no longer just science, it was containment. But the most haunting part wasn't the secrecy, it was the implication behind the timing, because if Atlas truly understood when and how we were looking at it, then it wasn't just aware of our presence, it was studying us. And somewhere between the stars and the silence, humanity realized it might not be the observer anymore. It might be the observed. The signal, the transmission, that froze the planet. It happened without warning. At 0217 UTC, radio observatories on 3 continents, Chile, South Africa, and Australia, registered a spike in narrowband frequency. At first, they assumed it was interference, a solar burst, or even a passing satellite. But when they cross-checked the signal's source, the coordinates aligned perfectly with a single object, 3I Atlas. The signal was unlike anything ever recorded, not random noise, not pulsar rhythm, not static. It carried a structure, repeating intervals, precise modulations, and a mathematical symmetry impossible for natural sources. The pattern echoed the same 3131 sequence first detected months earlier. The universe wasn't silent anymore, it was speaking. The transmission lasted only 5 seconds, but in that time, every receiver on Earth capable of picking up deep space frequencies detected it. Power grids spiked, instruments overloaded, and entire systems crashed under the data influx. The signal was both information and energy, a coded pulse that pierced the electromagnetic veil of our planet. It left behind a digital scar, a pattern that defied compression, translation, or deletion. In the minutes that followed, chaos rippled through control rooms. Some scientists reported hearing faint tones, not mechanical, but harmonic, almost melodic, embedded within the transmission. Others swore they could detect repeating numerical ratios, like a cosmic equation meant to be solved. Whatever it wasn't random, it was intelligent and intentional. NASA went dark within the hour. Live data feeds from the Deep Space Network froze. The European Space Agency's servers went offline, Even amateur astronomers who had been tracking the object suddenly lost access to telemetry streams. Someone, somewhere, had pulled the plug. For days, speculation exploded online. Had Atlas sent a message to humanity? Or a signal to something else? If it was communication, who was it for? And why now, after billions of years of silence? Questions spread faster than answers could be censored. When the systems finally came back online, the official statement from NASA was brief and unsettlingly vague. Signal origin under review, natural explanation pending. But those who had seen the raw waveform data knew better. The pattern wasn't natural, it was deliberate, and it wasn't meant to be ignored. NASA's silence. What followed was perhaps the strangest chapter in modern astronomy, a silence louder than any discovery. In the wake of the signal, NASA's transparency protocols collapsed overnight. Observation schedules were erased from public logs, research teams were temporarily reassigned, and access to Atlas data, once freely available to universities, was sealed behind security clearance. It wasn't just secrecy, it was fear. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, once famous for its openness, quietly flagged Atlas as a classified research priority. When journalists filed Freedom of Information Act requests, the responses came back heavily redacted, entire pages blacked out. The reason cited was chilling: national security over a comet. European agencies mirrored the move almost instantly. The European Space Agency, once independent in its analyses, shut down its own data stream without explanation. Joint missions between NASA and ESA, normally built on cooperation, were suddenly suspended. Behind closed doors, whispers spread. The agencies weren't hiding ignorance, they were hiding understanding. Researchers who had spoken publicly about Atlas began to disappear from conferences. Some claimed their credentials were revoked, their funding frozen. Others went silent, unreachable even by colleagues. Inside the scientific community, one word started to circulate in private forums: containment. But what could possibly require containment? If Atlas was a natural object, why would it provoke lockdown-level secrecy? Some believed NASA had decoded part of the signal, and what it revealed wasn't meant for public ears. Others suspected panic, that the agency itself didn't understand what it was seeing, and feared global hysteria. Both explanations were terrifying. Then came the leaks. An internal memo surfaced from a subcontractor working with the Deep Space Network. It read only 5 words: contact protocol under preliminary review. That phrase confirmed what no one wanted to admit. The agencies weren't just studying the object anymore, they were preparing for contact. Theories, messenger, or sentinel. With the silence of NASA came a vacuum, and nature, as always, abhors a vacuum. In the absence of answers, theories began to multiply. Astrophysicists, philosophers, and conspiracy theorists all began to ask the same question: what is 3i Atlas really? And more importantly, why is it here? The first camp called it the messenger hypothesis. They believed Atlas was a probe, an interstellar envoy designed to awaken when a civilization reached a certain level of awareness, not to make contact, but to observe. A silent test of intelligence, patience, and perception. The idea was chilling in its simplicity. Maybe we had finally evolved enough to be noticed. The second theory was far darker: the sentinel hypothesis. It proposed that Atlas wasn't a messenger at all, but a monitoring device placed long ago to record the rise and fall of species. Perhaps it had been drifting through systems like ours for eons, watching, measuring, waiting for the right moment to signal home. And the signal we received wasn't a greeting. It was a report. If that were true, then the silence after the signal wasn't a cover-up. It was fear of acknowledgement. because a message sent from Earth could invite an answer. And what if the one listening wasn't friendly? But a third, more nuanced interpretation emerged from a handful of rogue scientists. They believed Atlas wasn't alive or even functioning as we think of machines. They proposed it was an artifact of a long-dead civilization, still operating through ancient code, a relic performing the last instruction it was ever given. Listen, record, report. If so, the transmission might not be a communication at all, but a ghost signal, a whisper from minds that perished before humanity even existed. One physicist, in a leaked symposium transcript, put it bluntly: maybe Atlas didn't come for us, maybe we came across its grave. Still others insisted the sequence, 3131, it wasn't a code, but a countdown, a warning, something set in motion long ago, now reaching its final cycle as it entered our solar system. If true, Atlas wasn't studying us, it was triggering something else. And as the world speculated, the object continued to drift closer, silent, brilliant, deliberate, as if aware that its mystery was the loudest voice in the universe. The cosmic mirror. Who's watching whom? By now, humanity had stopped looking at Atlas as an object. It had become something else entirely, a mirror held up to our own species. Every theory, every explanation reflected more about our fears and hopes than about the thing itself. The question was no longer, what is Atlas? It was, what does Atlas think of us? From a distance of millions of kilometers, telescopes captured light reflecting off its surface. Cold, silver, unyielding. Some scientists began noticing patterns in those reflections, subtle modulations that matched our own radio emissions, as if the object was mimicking us, echoing back our own signals, studying the very act of observation itself. The idea grew that Atlas wasn't just a machine, it was a cosmic mirror showing us how we behave when faced with the unknown. It didn't need to communicate in language, its presence alone forced us to confront ourselves. Our arrogance, our curiosity, our fear of insignificance. Perhaps that was its purpose all along. And then came the most chilling realization of all. For billions of years, the universe appeared empty because we weren't looking the right way. But what if, all along, it was looking back? Every telescope we've aimed outward, every probe we've launched into the dark. What if they were never truly alone out there? What if someone, or something, had been quietly watching our awakening, waiting for this very moment? Some thinkers began to frame the event not as discovery but as initiation. Humanity's first step into the reality that observation goes both ways. That the cosmos is not a stage but a conversation. And that somewhere in that conversation, Atlas had decided it was time for us to listen. Philosophers called it the return of the gaze, the moment the universe became aware that we were aware of it. And if that's true, then Three-Eye Atlas didn't arrive to scare us or enlighten us. It arrived to measure our reaction, to test whether our curiosity outweighed our fear, to see if we were ready to be seen. In that sense, Atlas might not be a threat at all. It might be something far more profound. A mirror, reflecting the maturity of an emerging species staring into infinity for the first time. The legacy of Three-Eye Atlas. In the months that followed, the object slipped quietly past Mars's orbit, heading toward the inner solar system. By then, no one outside classified circles knew what was truly happening. Public telescopes were redirected, data streams throttled, and every official statement grew shorter, vaguer, colder. Yet, even in silence, one truth became impossible to deny. Three-Eye Atlas had changed us. Before Atlas, humanity looked at the stars and saw mystery. After Atlas, we saw reflection, evidence that the mystery might be looking back. It shattered the illusion of cosmic loneliness, replacing it with something even more profound: cosmic attention. For the first time in history, our species realized that discovery cuts both ways. We had spent centuries searching for life. Now, or something like it, had found us first. No one could agree on what Atlas truly was. A machine? A monument? A message left adrift? Some believed it was an artifact from a civilization older than the stars we see, its purpose lost to time. Others thought it was a probe still executing commands from its makers, long dead across the void. And a few dared to suggest it was something beyond comprehension, a living system that was the message itself. But whatever it was, it forced us to evolve. Science grew bolder, philosophy deeper, and religion quieter. The discovery united physicists and poets alike in a single, humbling realization: the universe is not a silent stage where we perform. It's a living conversation, and we've just learned to hear one word of it. In hidden labs, they still study fragments of the signal. Mathematicians search for patterns, linguists analyze rhythm and symmetry, theologians call it revelation. No one knows if it will transmit again, but every night radio dishes around the world continue to listen, not for noise, not for chaos, but for that perfect order that once broke through the dark. Meanwhile, Atlas drifts deeper into our solar system. It no longer transmits, no longer adjusts, no longer gleams as brightly as before. Perhaps its mission is complete, perhaps it was never meant to stay, or perhaps, as some whisper, it is simply waiting for our reply. Historians will one day write that 3i Atlas was more than an object. It was a mirror that showed us who we are when confronted with the infinite: fearful, curious, united, small, and yet somehow vast. It reminded us that knowledge and terror are twins, and that awe is the price of awakening. We looked into the abyss, and finally, the abyss looked back. And maybe that's the true legacy of Atlas. Not its metal skin or impossible movement, not the signal or the secrecy, but the moment it forced humanity to understand the oldest truth in the cosmos: we are part of something alive. And it has been aware of us all along. The stars, it seems, were never silent. We just hadn't yet learned how to listen.